Hi, my name is Nathan Cornell, and I'm here to talk about my internship. I worked the summer of 2020 with OWAA, which is the Outdoor Writers Association of America, and I helped specifically with their online publication, Outdoors Unlimited. And as I'll talk about later on, my three main tasks were editing, writing and research, and social media research. I helped kind of outline a good foundation for them to start social media because we were basically starting from the ground up. So I'll start with who OWAA is and what Outdoors Unlimited is. So as you can see here, it's a quote from their website. They say they're an international nonprofit organization that represents a diverse group of professional communicators dedicated to sharing the outdoor experience. So when I was looking for an internship, I had a very narrow view of what outdoors media was. I basically thought you were either a photographer or a writer. When in reality, OWAA showed that it's really so much more than that. There's this wide community of people that love the outdoors and are associated with outdoors media. And as you can see here, it talks about editors, authors. There's a wide range of people. I got to talk to some of the industry's leading professionals, specifically with photography. I wrote an article about photo editing, and I got to talk to a really well-known underwater photographer. I got to talk to a landscape photographer, a wildlife photographer. In another article I wrote, I got to talk to some editors of some well-known publications that were all part of OWAA, and it helped show that there's this large community of people associated with outdoors media outside of just writing and photography. It talks here that they're dedicated to helping members increase profitability and grow intellectually. So one of their large goals is networking. So this just gives there's thousands of members associated with OWAA, so it's a good networking platform for people who love the outdoors. And there are a lot of photographers and writers, but it's so much more than just that. So as I stated previously, and as I'm about to dive into, my three major tasks were editing. We had an online publication that was released every 2 months. So when I came in, it was the July and August edition was about to be finalized. So that was kind of my first task. Another large task I had was social media outline and strategizing. They had no social media presence when I came in. So my task was to kind of outline that, research effective strategies for reaching their target audience, expanding their audience. And I had to present this to the head of OWAA. And then writing and research was also a large part of what I did, and that was my favorite part. So then I'll dive into these three. So with editing, like I said, it was posted every 2 months. I had a piece in the September-October edition and November-December edition. So as I talk about here, I would be tasked weekly with editing articles. Right when I came in, I was kind of the final editor for the edition they were about to finalize. So I was just looking for grammar mistakes, format mistakes, anything big that was maybe overlooked. So there were a variety of pieces that I was tasked with editing: interviews, opinion pieces, book reviews, anything related to the outdoors. They published, so they just wanted to reach a broad audience of anyone who enjoyed the outdoors. It was part of OWAA, so there was poetry in there. There were opinion pieces. There were fiction stories. There was everything. Like I said, with some of these pieces, they had already been edited, so there wasn't a lot for me to do. But then later on in my internship, I was kind of the first line. I was the first person looking at these articles, so there were more mistakes that I had to correct. Additionally, with the pieces I wrote, those also underwent editing, and I would go back and have to make corrections. But moving on, this is an example of one of the pieces I edited. It was Ask an Expert. It was about fly fishing, and I did enjoy reading this article. This was one of the first ones I edited, so there weren't a lot of mistakes, but this kind of gave me a good feel for what types of stories get published in OWAA. This is a guy talking about his life, talking about fly fishing. So Moving on with social media, that was my first big task. Right when I got there, Susan Downing, who was she was right directly over me. She talked about social media was a goal of theirs, that they really wanted to grow their social media presence because they had nothing. So I had to set up a presentation. Me and her both worked on it, and then we both presented it in front of Ches Chizak, who's he was the newly appointed president of OWAA at the time. So like I said, they had no social media presence, and with their target audience was above the average age of social media use. So social media use is usually a younger audience, whereas OWAA had an older audience. So that was one of the hurdles that we had to deal with and kind of work through, because we had to come up with strategies that would appeal to the younger demographic. We had to first determine what the correct audience was, and that was people who enjoy the outdoors. We were going to target the members of OWAA, but also people who maybe don't know what the Outdoor Writers Association of America is and might want to be a part of it in the future. So we came up with strategies to keep people engaged. We talked about displaying different products, having sponsorships, having sweepstakes each week, giveaways, different things to keep people engaged. We talked about the schedule of posts that we would need, so it was a constant. There was a constant schedule to it, so people could expect to see a post from us, and that would kind of give us a place in people's minds when they're first finding out about OWAA. Like we said, one of the main goals is growing with a younger audience, and just providing a new platform for outdoors media, because this is the largest community of outdoor writers, but there's no social media presence. So we determined that was a immediate need for OWAA. Writing and research was a large part of what I did, and that's why I took this internship, was because writing is ultimately what I would like my career to be, something with writing and traveling with the outdoors. So it involved brainstorming story ideas, interviews, photography, and other research. So I would brainstorm each week with Suzanne Downing, and she would give me we would go back and forth on ideas for that week for my writing. With this, I practiced a lot of the journalistic skills I've learned through Brian. Grammar had to be correct, story had to flow well, there had to be an outline, I had to do interviews, I had to fact check everything, and then corrections would be made following by Suzanne, and we would go back and forth like a traditional publication. Additionally, photos also had to be matched with the story, so that's where photography came in. That's another interest of mine. That was one of the most enjoyable things for me, was taking pictures and getting the pictures. So if I interviewed somebody, I would have to get a high-res picture from them of themselves or something to do with their activity. So when I interviewed the underwater photographer, I had to get high-res pictures from him. When I talked to editors, I had to get high-res pictures of their publication. So there were a lot of different aspects that went into this, but a lot of real world practicum for a lot of the stuff I've learned in journalism and communications classes. This is an example of a piece I wrote. It was about photo editing tips. So with outdoors photography, one of the goals is a natural look to the picture. So I was thinking about it. I'm like, with all these new photo editing softwares and how easy it is to edit photos, what do outdoor photographers look for? Do they want more editing, less editing? So I talked to a landscape photographer, a wildlife photographer, and an underwater photographer, and they all kind of had the same consensus that less is more with photo editing. It shouldn't be, one of the ladies I talked to told me specifically it shouldn't be a fix and post thing. It should be, if the picture's not good when you take it, it's not worth publication. It's not worth use. So you shouldn't have to be fixing things at editing that aren't major problems. What all three said to me was, if it takes more than 15 minutes to edit a photo, it's no good because you're doing too much editing. Other than changing the exposure and some of the brightness and colors, you really shouldn't be doing much. Even with colors, you're starting to get into where it's less of a natural feel. So with lessons learned, real world application was a large part. A lot of the journalistic skills I learned had been put to use at Bryan, but not in a real world sense. There were hard deadlines that had to be met, so that it wasn't you just get a late grade if you don't turn this in. There were hard deadlines that had to be met, so there was a strict timetable. With social media, that was more practical use. With this new technology age that we're living in, social media is playing a larger part in almost any job you go to, especially with communications. So that was a real valuable. Those were real valuable skills that I learned and got to put to use here. And group work, specifically when I was pitching the social media outline, I had to work with Suzanne, and I also had to speak in front of Ches Chizak, the president. So that was more practical use of communication skills. I also enjoyed and learned a lot from industry professionals I got to talk to. With photographers, I would love to do photography at some point in my career. So it was great getting to talk to people who had actually gotten to make a living out of something that I enjoy doing. And it kind of showed me that there are different categories for outdoor photography. You don't have to be just landscape or just wildlife. There's like the guy I've mentioned a couple times, he was an underwater photographer. But there's also landscape, wildlife. There are different seasons you can photograph. It's much wider than I initially thought. So there were a lot of applicable skills for a writing career. This gave me a lot of practical experience, but also taught me some stuff that I couldn't have learned in a classroom setting. So for my personal reflection, I really came to realize how broad the outdoor media, the field is. Like I said, when I came in, I thought it was just photography and writing, when in reality, there's this large community of outdoor writers that all network together. So it's not that unattainable of a goal to be an outdoor writer. It further strengthened my desire to join the field and to work in outdoors media. I looked at this more of as a hobby before, whereas this kind of made it a reality where it's something that is attainable. I gained a much deeper understanding of the field that I had previously seen as just a hobby. So something that I just enjoyed doing. This made it seem attainable, that I could have a job in writing that I really enjoyed, that involved the outdoors and involved travel. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.